Yeah, yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the Locker Room.
All right. We say it a lot, man that needs no introduction, and then we introduce him. So I'm going to go ahead and avoid saying a man that needs no introduction. Gary Kubiak joining me in the locker room. Houston football royalty, really royalty around the NFL. Your impact still being felt, Coach. Always a pleasure to get to talk to you. I would say you're the closest thing that the Texans have to a Super Bowl. We were trying to go through, like, what joy did you take most in a Super Bowl? And I would say Gary Kubiak's Super Bowl is probably the most joy that we felt here as far as like a Super Bowl. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate you, man.
Oh, you bet, Landry. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to get into, we've talked to you about DeMeco Ryans and how you felt and stuff, but I just want to get into like some of the stuff that DeMeco is going through and how maybe you yourself handled it and how you would handle it if you were him. And I want to start with the draft noise. Because I got a kick out of Kyle Shanahan 2 years ago when they traded up for 3. Everyone thought they were going to take Jones. They took Lance, and he was almost at the end sticking his middle fingers up to the media, laughing at people chasing their tails. Is it important how a coach handles draft noise? How is DeMeco going to handle it? Because he's definitely gotten his share of it, and I'm sure you've seen it before. I mean, hell, you've been the biggest part of it around here. How do you handle that? Is there a right way? Does it really matter?
Well, I think the bottom line is it's what you're trying to build your football team. So, I mean, there's always going to be noise about, who you're picking, why you're picking them, where you're picking them, the value of where you're picking them. But ultimately, you're going to be responsible down the line for, failure and success. So, especially when you're a young coach and you're sitting there picking at the top of the draft, you've obviously got a lot of issues. I mean, your team has more than one problem to solve. So I think the biggest thing is you're trying to take a step forward at the end of this draft with the type of players you want to surround yourself and try to build your organization with. DeMeco knows the type of guys he wants to go fight with on Sunday. He knows exactly, what he wants. And he's even, they went out and gotten a couple of players that have been with him. So, that helps him get a head start with his football team. So I'm sure, for me, it was always about surrounding myself with people that I wanted to go battle with, guys that, trying to eliminate, mistakes, so to speak, especially when you're a young team trying to take a step to become competitive. So a lot of things going on from that standpoint.
How much balls does it take to avoid a quarterback at the top of the draft? At what point do you start having the discussion about that type of thing? Does it take coconuts, or does it take more coconuts to kind of reach on the quarterback?
Well, I tell you what, it probably doesn't take as much as you would think if you've done your homework and you've studied and you've made a decision that, hey, there's not a guy here that can change our franchise. There's not a guy here that's a 10-year starter, so going and making those decisions after all the work you've done, it's really simple from that standpoint because you're the one that's done the work. Now you're getting questioned by people who, are studying it just as well as you are. But I mean, the bottom line is you got to do what's best for your team. And like I said, when you're picking that high in the draft, you got a long way to go, and I'm sure you got a lot of holes to fill. So the biggest thing is not making mistakes. Getting football players that are going to be around for a while, going to be a part of your organization for a while.
What is the challenge of working on the other side of the rock? Because that was probably the biggest pushback on the DeMeco hiring. Is it's an offensive league. You need an offensive coach. What's he going to do offensively? You're an offensive guy. There was a time where you kind of had to fix the defense. What are the biggest challenges of, leaving your, for lack of a better term, level of expertise and either trusting or not meddling too much or not meddling enough? What are the challenges of that?
Well, I tell you what, Landry, all the great personnel people I've been around, Ozzie Newsome, John Elway, people are listeners. And I really think what you do in a draft room is you got to sit in there and listen, especially if you're a head coach or you're a general manager. You got a lot of people you surrounded yourself with that are going to coach for you that you believe in, or you wouldn't have hired them. So you need to listen. You're sitting there listening for a couple of months. Obviously, as an offensive guy, I gave my perspective on how I saw a defensive guy. Now I wasn't going to tell Bill Kolar or Wade Phillips, I wasn't going to step over them from a standpoint of a defensive football player. I was going to listen to them, but I also tried to give them my input as far as, what I saw in this guy, what I saw him doing for our football team. And then, but the bottom line is you got to go get these players for these coaches. If Wade and Bill were jumping up and down for J.J. Watt, I mean, it was crazy. It's okay. You guys believe in him. You're sitting here jumping up and down on this table. Let's go get him, and you guys do your magic with him. So that really boils down to all the work that you're doing.
What about a disagreement between a GM and coach in the process? What does that look like? Is there just people around a table and you're going back and forth? What does that look like? Lots been made of, Caserio working with DeMeco, which a lot of it's common sense. Like, it's obviously guys working together, different phases. One's been here longer than the other. Like, there's going to be some disagreements just naturally. What does that look like? What is a disagreement? What's like the most intense disagreement between Gary Kubiak and a GM? What does it look like?
Well, I mean, if you're agreeing all the time in that room, you're probably not making much headway. I mean, that's why you want everybody's opinion. You got to sort all that out. But there's an old saying, Landry, after you've been in that room for a couple of months and you've gotten everybody's opinion, not everybody's going to agree, but Nick has to go pull the trigger. He's got to go make a pick. And once you get to that point, hell, you're all in it together. So you've done your homework. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, but this is a decision we made as a group. We walk out of this room and we go to work with this guy.
What's the value? Now you worked with some veteran quarterbacks, but what is the value like if you're evaluating a young guy in pro days, interviews, et cetera? Because I was making fun of McClain yesterday. He came in, and every time he's talking about a quarterback, he's like, man, he's just a great interview. And I'm like, dude, you would have drafted Tim Tebow number one. Like, you probably would have traded 3 1s and 3 2s and 3 3s for Tebow. What is the value in a pro day, interview, tape, all that? What are the values of evaluating a young guy?
Well, to me, like, there are kind of 2 types of interviews. Is the person, it's getting to know the guy. What type of man was he? How motivated was he? But there's the football interview too. And it's, okay, how far is this kid advanced as far as, what we're going to be asking him to do skill-wise, reading progressions, NFL route trees, those type of things. So, those things were kind of different. You're trying to put all that together and say, okay, this kid's going to succeed. He's got all these things. Or this kid has this far to go because the football end, he's way behind, as far as an NFL, what you're asking of an NFL quarterback. So, those are different type of things, but, eventually they all tie together, and it's somebody you got to feel good about putting in your locker room.
What do you think of any of these quarterbacks? Have you looked at any of these guys in this class? And let's not talk about Bryce Young because, that's probably not going to happen. But have you done any work on these guys?
I watched them, obviously not the way I'd be watching them if I was working and in a draft room with somebody at this point in the season or this point in the year. But I watch them with other guys, these Europe guys I tell you about, like how I would evaluate a player, how I watch a player. So that's kind of what I do. But, I mean, there's a lot of talent out there. I mean, obviously, this kid from Tennessee, he's a fine-looking player coming off an injury. Age, all those things, which, I have no privilege to because I'm in a different aspect right now. I'm just watching the player, the young kid from Florida with all the talent that's, you're not studying. Back in our day, Landry, we study more careers. You watch a player, a guy played 3 or 4 years. You studied careers. Nowadays, you're watching some guy, has 5 or 6 games and has a tremendous combine, and now all of a sudden he's a first-round pick. So it's the evaluation process has changed, in my opinion. You have really got to be able to project down the line because of the lack of careers in college, the short careers, the year-and-a-half career, and all of a sudden here they come and they're in your lap as far as draft choices go. So I just think it's changed, but obviously there's a lot of good players out there. It'll be interesting to see, how they fall out because it looks like they could be ranked in various ways for various teams.
Do you think your offensive system, the system that you run, is generalized too much? Because I look around and I see a lot of guys running it and they don't run it the same. But you always hear, well, in this system, what is this system? And do you think it gets generalized too much as if there's like one way to do it?
Yeah, I would say you're probably right, Landry. I think when people talk about systems, they really talk more about uh, a way of teaching. You know, I mean, uh, like Kyle in San Francisco, and I keep up with what he does, and he's expanded. But the way he teaches, the way he installs an offense, the way he brings, uh, you know, the run game with the pass game, the play action game, the teaching concepts are the same. So I think when people say he's running this system or that system, I think it's more of a way of how you present your teaching material. As far as running the same plays, I mean, shit, everybody's moving on, doing different things, RPOs and those type of things. So, I think you're talking more about how things are taught.
Speaking of Todd, you're known for having a lot of guys in the building that were pups and now they're NFL guys. At what point do you get to the point where mentoring is like really important? Because in the NFL, you're trying, I don't want to say covering your own ass, but there's a lot of survival there and there's a lot of stuff you want to figure out. You've had many guys in the building and with you that have gone on to be NFL guys. At what point was like mentoring important to you, or was it always something that was important to you?
Well, I hope it was always important to me. I mean, I think I don't think along the way sometimes you really know who's in that room with you, and as coaches, your responsibilities and the things you have going on have got you consumed, and all of a sudden you got a kid sitting in your room who's sitting in a corner, not even sitting at the head table with the rest of the coaching staff, and you have no idea this kid 10 years later is going to be a NFL head coach. So that's why you just try to surround yourself with good guys that are passionate. It's like I look back at Robert Saleh. I mean, I hired Robert Saleh because I got through with an interview in Houston, went up to my office, and he was sitting at a desk, and I had no idea who he was. And I asked somebody, who's the kid sitting in that room over there? And they said, well, this is Robert Saleh. He's been here with Coach Capers and Vic, so I went over and introduced myself, and he's just like, Coach, I just want to work and I just want to learn. And I'm like, okay, kid, let's go to work, And I had no idea, and look at him now. But I think that's why you need to be receptive to young people and open yourself up to dialogue with them, because you never know who's sitting in that room and what they're capable of doing.
I've heard some Mike McDaniel stories. What was Mike McDaniel like back in the day? And he obviously he's talked about, he's turned his life around. He's a little bit different of maybe the same mind, but a little clearer mind, I will say, now as compared to then. Because Mike McDaniel's like the viral. What was he like back then?
He's a brilliant kid, kind of a live wire, young, trying to get him into your routine as a coach, the hours you worked, how late you stayed up there, the things you did. And to be honest with you, I look back, and Mike was probably a little bored. He was so damn smart that I couldn't give him enough work to keep him in the office long enough. And, he had to go out and have some fun on me, which we all like to do. But no, Mike's a good kid. He's worked really hard to get to where he's at. He's had some ups and downs, and he's learned along the way. And you got to give people like Kyle a lot of credit. They stuck with him. Mike Shanahan stuck with him. They brought him to Washington, and look where he's at today. So talked to Mike quite a bit, doing good things in Miami. Looks like he's got a good football team. And I'll tell you what, adding Vic Fangio, watch out. That's a big piece of that puzzle.
What is DeMeco like? If you're talking about all the guys you mentor, do you think he's more of a solid guy? You think he's a mix of all? Like, if you had to say, just personality wise, is DeMeco comparable to any of these guys?
I mean, he's his own guy. DeMeco's so self-confident. I mean, and believing in himself and what he's doing. DeMeco doesn't have to work to go in a room. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I mean, he's just natural. He walk in a room, teach something, motivate a group of men. That comes natural to DeMeco. So, when you look at how much ground he's made up since he decided to get into coaching, that tells you, how sharp he is. He's got a lot on his plate. I talk to him from time to time. I know he's got a lot going on right now, but a big opportunity for him. He's surrounding himself with some good people. And now it's time for him to go put a stamp on those guys here after the draft when he gets his team together. So, I'm just excited to watch him work. I'm rooting for him just like everybody else. He's a great kid. He's good for the city. He's good for the organization. Everybody get behind him and make this thing work.
So what the hell is Gary Kubiak doing now? I know you were at the Masters. What is Gary Kubiak up to now?
Well, I teach once a week. As I told you before, I get together with some guys over in Europe and I, teach some stuff. So that keeps me going. I mess around with a few kids throwing the ball. I go out and get my coaching fix, here around town and some various quarterbacks. But, I stay very connected. I've got 2 kids in San Francisco now, so stay very connected to what they're doing and what's going on, and still get to watch a lot of film. I miss it. Hell, I don't know what to do with myself sometimes, but it's all good. A lot of people in the business that I talk to, I'm gonna follow the draft just like everybody else, and interested to see how things work out next week.
They can't keep you away from ball, can they?
Probably never. That's just kind of part of the gig.
Well, everybody wanted you to come here and like be the OC or something like that. I was like, man, let the guy relax a little bit. Like let him chill a little bit. Everyone was like, yeah, bring Gary here to be OC. I'm like, man, let him relax a little bit. I don't want to bring my man here to work out with Davis Mills. You want to talk about stress?
I'll come watch Bobby do it. I worked with Bobby's dad for years in Denver and known him for a long time. Big football family. I know Bobby did a great job for Kyle in San Francisco, and I'm excited to watch him kind of put this thing together and what he wants to do. I know DeMeco knows exactly what he wants it to look like, and now it's Bobby's turn to go put it together. So I'm excited to come watch and see.
Does Bobby ever talk to you at all about anything? What are we getting in Bobby? He's kind of the wild card.
Yeah, he's real close with my sons. My middle son worked with him the last 2 years in San Francisco, and of course he and Clint know each other. But I think what you're getting is a kid full of knowledge through his experience with Kyle. Kyle's a dominant offensive coach when you work for him. So in a lot of ways, you're just sitting there watching him, learning from him. So now it's Bobby's turn. I mean, it's his turn to go in the room, command the room. It's his turn to call the game on Sunday. So it's just something you work toward. And obviously, DeMeco's been right there watching him do it in San Francisco. So, he's very impressed. And, he goes and gets a guy that he's comfortable with and knows what he wants. So, it's like I said, it's his turn. I'm excited to watch Bobby. I know he'll work his tail off.
All right, Coach, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for your time. The impact is still being felt, and we're all excited about DeMeco. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
All right, Landry. Have a great day. Take care.
Man, right there. Gary Kubiak here in the locker room. The man, the myth, the legend. The impact still being felt all around here. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Draft approaching.
Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube.